I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Daryl Nuss. Daryl is the Executive Director and CEO of National Network of Youth Ministries. Daryl comes to us tonight with over 40 years of youth ministry experience. That is some battle scars. Okay. His background includes serving with Campus Crusade for Christ, which is Cru today, their high school ministry for 30 years, moving to Russia in the early 90s to launch Campus Crusade's youth ministry there after the breakup of the USSR, taking hundreds of students and adults on mission trips to Russia to host English camps each spring for the past 20 years, serving with the World Evangelical Alliance Youth Commission, working with national youth ministry leaders on 5 continents. Daryl and his wife, Donna, are Barnabas Group members in San Diego. Please give Daryl a warm round of applause.
Thanks, Jim. Whoa. Before we get started, I want to introduce you to a special person. Tonight with us is Mike DeVito, who serves as our Southwest Regional Coordinator for the National Network of Youth Ministries. Mike has a great legacy in youth ministry and does a great job of connecting people here in the Southern California area. Well, I'll start off with a question. How many of you have ever raised a teenager or in the process of raising a teenager? Okay. Well, how many of you appreciate, like Don and I did, having what we call a significant other adult? That'd be a youth pastor, coach, teacher, maybe it'd be a close relative, who was able to come alongside your teenager and relate and talk in a way that you just couldn't. And now think for a second, and maybe it happened, what was it like when that individual disappeared or was no longer in your teenager's life? What was the deficit? Well, Dave's story was a typical teenager in suburban Chicago, grew up in a non-Christian home, had the typical issues that most teenagers have, but he had a crush on a cute girl who he understood, some kind of church youth group. And so one evening he showed up to the youth group and met a guy who's the youth pastor by the name of Aaron Babiar. And Aaron began to relate to David, and over a course of weeks began to talk about different things about the person of Jesus Christ. And eventually, David made a very serious commitment to follow Christ. And today, David is a parent himself of 2 daughters and the lay leader in his church. And as Paul Harvey would say, now for the rest of the story. You see, 3 years before, Aaron was ready to quit youth ministry. He had served at a church in Detroit, worked hard, then a disagreement developed with he and his church leadership, and he was asked to resign. And he was devastated. And as Aaron shares, I was barely able to put diapers on my baby and purchase them, and then they cut me loose. And to add to the pressure, his dad offered him a position in the family business back in Iowa. But Kevin Parkin, who is the Metro Coordinator for the National Network of Youth Ministries, heard about Aaron's situation, took him out to lunch, listened, and then connected Aaron to the other youth leaders there in the Detroit area. And they came along and said, Aaron, you can't quit youth ministry. We feel God's got a special call in your life. And they stuck with him until he relocated to Chicago. Today, Aaron Babiar serves on the executive team of the National Network of Youth Ministries. And when I think about it, I'm not only concerned about what David's life would be like, but youth ministry in general, had not there been a group of youth leaders to come alongside him when he really needed it. And tonight, I stand before you on behalf of thousands of youth leaders just like Aaron who are over-challenged and under-resourced, and roughly 30 million teenagers in our own country, to share with you why I, in these valuable years of my life, am giving them to leading the National Network of Youth Ministries. In the next few minutes, I want to share with you about the mission of the network, our unique role that we play, some of the impact, and then most importantly, how you can perhaps use some of your expertise and influence to close a vital gap in seeing lost teenagers become vibrant Christ followers. In short, the National Network of Youth Ministries multiplies and leverages the efforts of youth ministries to unite and work together to reach and disciple students. So in short, we are reaching youth together. Is that showing? There we go. And we do that in a number of ways. One of the ways that we do it is at the national level. We serve as a neutral platform for roughly 150 ministries and denominations. It could be large denominations and ministries and then very unique ministries. In fact, next week at a hotel up near the John Wayne Airport, we're going to be hosting 40 executive leaders who will leave their logos and egos at the door and come together as they have on an annual basis for a number of years to build relationships, pray together, and then look for those ways that they can work together. And someone asked me earlier, well, how does it work? You would be amazed if you could come together and see the way these different ministries give away their resources to each other. And at the grassroots level, we have staff and volunteers who share their vision and resources to help connect youth leaders and concerned adults and communities to reach the youth in their community. We currently have about 850 local networks. And there you see Mike DeVito leads one here in the Orange County area up there near Biola. And then I lead one in Poway Unified School District down in San Diego, just to give you an example. And we have roughly 850 of these local networks around the country currently with about 10,000 connected youth leaders. And our ultimate vision is to see youth leaders in every community connected, which is about 3,900 with about 50,000 youth leaders working together. So what's the impact? And that's not an easy question when you're not necessarily directly involved in working with young people. But let me give you a couple of examples of what we feel is the impact. In the last 5 years, we have done 2 different surveys assessing the needs of youth ministers. And it's been gratifying to learn that a youth minister who is connected to another group of youth ministers will stay in the ministry 2.5 times longer than those who are not. Now think for a second, in your local church, what's the impact when you have your youth minister, your youth pastor stay 7, 8, 9, 10 years? Or conversely, what's the impact, not only financially, I mean, it's to replace the person, but what's the emotional and relational impact in your church to the kids and the families when there's turnover of youth leaders? One of the other areas that are good examples right here in Orange County. For instance, just yesterday, as a result of a lot of Mike's work, we were able to pull together the regional coordinators for and regional directors for most of the major youth ministries here in Southern California. That'd be Young Life, Youth for Christ, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Moms in Prayer, Christian Educators, youth workers, urban youth workers, and a number of others came together, and we talked about what would it take to have a ministry on every school in Southern California. And it may interest you to know that if you take the bottom 10 counties of California, there are 2,640 secondary schools with a total population of about 1.9 million. And there are certain communities where there's almost all the ministries are accounted for because we have a database of all 68,000 schools in America. And then there's some like in Los Angeles where there's only about 30% that are currently connected. Another example here in Orange County would be the annual Turn Your Campus event. Maybe some of you are familiar with this, but it's this past January, about 1,650 students and some of their workers came together at Biola. It's hosted at Biola to talk about how can I have a ministry on my campus. And that started almost 20 years ago when there was a small group in Long Beach who wanted to begin to train their people. And over the years, Mike DeVito and Al Siebert with Youth for Christ have been connecting people so that we now have an annual event like that. So what does all that mean to us tonight? Like you, Don and I are Barnabas members down in San Diego, and we're Barnabas members because we want to see lost people come to know Christ. And like you, we are concerned about the future as it relates to our kids and grandkids. And so as we think about what that looks like, and I give a lot of time thinking about how do we move beyond where we currently are, because despite all the efforts of some of these outstanding ministries, and my guess is you support some of these outstanding youth ministries here in Orange County, and they're doing a great job. Despite all those efforts, we still have a large percentage of kids who never have a chance to hear the gospel. And so what are some of the missing components? And I really believe that some of you in this room are a part of the solution. Because God can use your expertise and influence to make a huge difference. And one of those ways that you can use your expertise and influence, in fact, if you want to just begin to look at your booklet here, is to provide influence to open doors in some of our schools where maybe youth leaders alone can't do it. And so you may be able to lend your influence. Another way that would be very helpful is for you to help us tell our story. You know, missions today is story-driven. And we have an active presence on social media, but to be honest, we have a deficit as a ministry in terms of having people who can collect those stories and put them in a way that we can communicate them out to others. And so if you have access or would be willing to volunteer to help us gather the stories, edit them, and put them in a way that they could be distributed, that would be fantastic. And then we also are thinking about putting together a development council. And that would be a group of people who would lend their expertise to help us take the ministry to the next level. And there are some of you who have that expertise in this room. You've done it in the business world. And it would really be valuable to us to maybe have your input on how we can take our ministry from where it is today to where we're making a broader impact across the country. And so those are some of the ways that if the Lord would lead that we could use you to come right alongside and make a huge difference. Well, let me end with one final story. This is a picture of the network up in Livermore, California. And every semester at Livermore High School, Granada High School in Livermore, California, there will be several students who will quietly come into the counselor's office in their school and say, I think my friend is thinking about suicide. Now, what created that kind of environment where a student would do that? Well, 15 years ago, Mary, who's in the middle, heard about this group of youth pastors that was meeting on a weekly basis, and she went because she cares about kids and got involved. And so she became helped in any way she could. 8 years ago, there was a rash of suicides in the Livermore School District, and it was Mary who went to the school principals and the superintendent and said, what are we going to do about this? And they have developed a suicide prevention course or presentations that are given to every freshman as they enter the school district about how you identify those tendencies that may lead to suicide. And those presentations are taught by members of the network. And you may not define Mary as a youth leader, but she's very much involved in youth ministry. And there are some of you who can use your expertise in much the same way. Like you, I have people ask me all the time, so what do you think about the future of our nation, particularly with the moral decline? And I guess two things come to mind as I conclude. One is now is not the time for despair. It's the time for us to exercise our hope. And I don't have time to go into it, but I believe that there could well be the tremor signals that we may be on the verge of revival. There's prayer across this country like you can't believe. And I can tell you individual stories of where communities are responding and seeing teenagers and those in them respond. And the second thing that I would say is let's don't forget our youth. Our youth are the future of our nation, our culture. And so I would encourage you tonight, as the Lord would be tugging on your heart to help in any way, that you would come alongside. Thanks so much.
Would you turn to page 23 in your handout? That's a feedback form for National Network of Youth Ministries. If you take just a second and fill that out, that would be great. I have to tell you that when Daryl asked how many people here had raised a teenager and just about everybody's hand went up, I was hoping he'd ask how many people enjoyed the Let's pray for Daryl and National Network of Youth Ministries. Father, I just thank you so much for the heart that you've given Daryl to work for 40 years, Lord, with youth. That's incredible. To have that kind of a heart, to see them come to the Lord, is just so important and so vital. And Lord, we just pray that tonight that there would be people here that might come alongside them, that would help them, and then in ways that they might not even have imagined when they walk through the door. So surprise us, Father. We'd love to see what you can do. We just pray this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ.